Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Review Flash. It's like a news flash, but it's a review flash. Yeah, it's been a minute since I've made one of these, but Daredevil Born Again Season 2 ended a few weeks ago, and I want to talk about it. And the question I'm posing is, did Born Again live up to the hype of the original Netflix Daredevil show? Now, the way we're going to go about this is I'm going to rank all 5 seasons of Daredevil from worst to best. And while we go along, I'm going to talk about what I liked and didn't like about each season. And I'm going to, at the end, compare and contrast what I think Born Again did well and maybe didn't do quite as well as from the original show. Okay, so starting off with number 5, and might I give you a heads up beforehand? I do not think any of these seasons were bad seasons. I think they're all great, but I think there's an obvious weakest link to put on the bottom, and that's the original Daredevil Season 2. This was a bit of an awkward season because they introduced, like in the first half, they had the Punisher, and the second half, they had Elektra in the Hand. And I understand the Elektra in the Hand stuff was building up towards the Defenders crossover, but it was still like a kind of bit of an awkward trying to fit in 2 different story arcs across the season that didn't really quite fit together in a neat way. And especially the Punisher stuff, right when it's getting good, that's when they start dragging Matt away to deal with the Hand and stuff like that. The Punisher stuff started really getting good when it was the story arc where he was on trial. The trial of the Punisher was right when the Punisher storyline started getting good, and that's right when Matt is getting dragged away at every chance the writers get to drag him away. He gets dragged away, and it's just annoying. And that's one of the first critiques I'll make about the original show is they didn't really do a lot with the lawyer side of Matt's character, because this was like pretty much the Punisher trial of the Punisher storyline was pretty much the only major story arc that took place in a courtroom, and Matt wasn't even there for it. So overall, season 2 I think is the obvious weak link of Daredevil, and so it's going in number 5. Now for number 4, I'm going to put the original Born Again Season 1. I think the first season of Born Again offered a very interesting shakeup to the formula, with it being almost, the best way I can describe it is like Season 1 The Flash, where you kind of have like villains of the week type thing, except those were kind of lengthened into like multiple episode storylines, but were still fairly self-contained storylines. So you had like the trial of the White Tiger, which was a great example of what to do with a courtroom storyline with Matt and how to include his lawyer side of his character. But you had that. You had the one episode where the bank was getting robbed that wasn't really amount to anything, and then you have the 2 episode Muse storyline, and so it is a good example of like little mini storylines that build into the bigger picture, which doesn't really get into it that much until season 2 of Born Again. Speaking of season 2 of Born Again, that's number 3 on my list. I feel like season 2 of Born Again and my number 2 pick for ranking the seasons of Daredevil are pretty close and kind of hard to differentiate a little bit of. But season 2 of Born Again offered a season-long storyline to conclude the Kingpin as the mayor arc, and it ends with a episode-and-a-half long conclusion that takes place almost solely in the courtroom, which is exactly what was missing from the original show, in my opinion. So having the trial of Karen Page story arc at the very end was a great conclusion. My one complaint with how they handled the resolution for this season is Kingpin, Wilson Fisk, when he's offered a deal to take to get out of legal trouble, he gets mad that he's finally been like exposed, and he goes and starts beating the absolute flip out of angry protesters outside until Matt finally convinces him to take the deal. And I'm like, whoa, that deal was offered to him before he went out and started busting people's heads open. So that's my one complaint, is it feels like him going through and like smacking like 12 people's skulls into the wall feels like it would kind of mess up that deal for him, but whatever. And then Matt gets arrested at the end, and it's like, okay. So overall, Born Again Season 2 was a great watch. Now we move on to the number 2 pick, the original Daredevil Season 3. This was a really good conclusion for the show. It kind of feels, the original Daredevil show kind of feels a little bit awkward because there's only really one season where he was in the Daredevil suit. And other than that, it was his kind of like generic black vigilante suit. But yeah, but this was a excellent like ending for his story. It just felt like they were missing maybe one more season with the original Daredevil suit, which we got through Born Again. But anyway, so this season was a great season. They built up to this, like they kind of showed how almost near unstoppable Fisk is, in the sense that he is borderline untouchable, because like he always is able to kind of like worm his way back into an advantage position, into a position of an advantage state. They introduced Bullseye here, and they also introduced Agent Hadim, which Daredevil has, the writers of these shows have this way of introducing these characters that are just so good, and they become popular characters with the fans who just don't make it in the end, and that's kind of annoying. Agent Hadim was one of the characters that I really wanted him to have a happy ending, and then get shot by Bullseye. So guess you can't win them all, but he ended up, his sacrifice ended up being what gave Matt the grounds to finally arrest Fisk again. And so his sacrifice was still a very cool aspect of the show. Now, just like with Born Again Season 2, about my little critique about how he was able to take the deal after smacking people's heads into walls, yeah, I got to make a little critique about the original Daredevil Season 3 conclusion as well. At the start of the finale, Matt makes the decision that he needs to end Kingpin, to end the problem once and for all. He then goes out of his way to put Bullseye on a crash course towards Kingpin, towards Fisk, where he informs Bullseye about how Fisk had wronged him by, like, whatever. Anyway, he basically makes Bullseye see red when he looks at Fisk. And so that felt like he's decided he needs to get rid of Fisk. He gave Bullseye the information he needs to feel angry at Fisk. It felt like that was the plan. And then he comes in and saves Fisk's life after he decided that Fisk needed to go. And of course, he ended up making the decision in the end that he couldn't cross that line, but it still felt a little weird that he made the decision that Fisk needs to go, and then the first thing he does when he gets to Fisk is save his life from Bullseye, which is a problem that he caused by giving Bullseye the information and whatever. So great season. Just that one moment is just a little bit awkward. And now finally, number 1, I don't think this is a surprise to anyone, the original season of Daredevil, Season 1. This is a great introduction to the character. It's cool to see how he kind of starts to build. He's the kind of like, in the generic black suit, he's kind of like, but he's building up to see, you get to see how he progresses until he gets the devil persona. And that's really cool. And seeing how his mindset is in that first like time frame of him really like being a vigilante in New York and trying to protect the city from this, like, essentially this gang violence and stuff like that, that's all being trailed back to the higher ups and Wilson Fisk. So it's really cool to see. And it's just a great season overall. I think in the end, I think Born Again does live up to the hype, but I don't think it quite exceeds the original show. One of the, I think Born Again has done a lot better with courtroom scenes, like just in general, like the lawyer side of his character. We actually get some dedicated episodes to courtroom stuff, and like to seeing how trial arcs, like with White Tiger and Karen Page, which was the climax of Born Again season 2. And I think that's really cool to see, because that's something that I feel like the original show didn't do quite a good job with. Now, the critique I will make about the show is, what do you mean they killed off Foggy in episode 1? It's like, for Born Again season 1, I wasn't super upset about Foggy being missing, because it felt like it was meant to be Matt kind of with a new, like, he's at his new firm, he has like new coworkers, whatever, the flip. But season 2, I feel like Foggy being missing just really stings. And it's like Born Again is supposed to be this, like, the characters are back, the main cast is back. And in season 1 of Born Again, like I said, you don't really feel Foggy being missing as much, because Karen wasn't there either for the most part. It felt like it was like a new cast of characters anyway. But season 2, when they start bringing back old characters like Karen, and it just, Foggy not being there stings, man. They did get one episode that was like a flashback to before the events of season 1, and Foggy got to be involved in that episode. But it's like, I don't know. I just can't get over the fact they killed off Foggy. But overall, I think the new Daredevil series, Born Again, did live up to the hype, just not in just the Foggy stuff, man. The original is really good, and it would have been, so the fact that Born Again is as good as it is amazing. And especially when we're getting a lot of other superhero movies from Marvel, that, like, movies and shows that maybe aren't quite as interesting, having a big hitter like Daredevil come in and they actually dedicate their effort into making sure the show is good was awesome. It's just a shame Spider-Man couldn't be there, but whatever. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. This is my first review flash I've made in a minute, and so hopefully there'll be more to come in the future. But thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.